the house was filled with the fragrance of that perfume. Been thinking about smells this week, smells and memory. And maybe you have noticed the way that smells connect with your memory and your emotions in a way that other things don't on quite such a visceral level. Sometimes a smell will hit you and suddenly you're 12 again. Or a smell will hit you and suddenly that one person is there with you. One of the experiences I have involves the smell of aspen cologne and an event in high school with some exchange students. It was right after the fall of the Soviet Union, and so a number of students from former Soviet republics were there in Washington to go on this trip and meet them. And I think that maybe between the 4 or 5 guys, they had found one bottle of this cologne and had sort of distributed it evenly amongst the 4 of them. And so you knew where they were in the hotel at any given time. And it was very powerful smell. And so to this day, if I smell that, I'm back there with those guys in this interesting moment of exchange. And sometimes they're not. That's sort of a neutral one. Sometimes they're negative. Maybe you have a smell that you just cannot abide. Once when I was young, my mother, I think my father may have been traveling and she was trying to get dinner moving quickly, and she certainly didn't know that I was coming down with a stomach bug, and so dinner was SpaghettiOs with little hot dogs cut up in it. And I was ill that night, and I cannot even open a can of SpaghettiOs or look at SpaghettiOs without that scent. I just have to walk away, that last thing you ate before you were sick, that smell sticks with you and you just can't do it. Or I've got a good one. Maybe you have one like this as well. My grandmother, when she died, it was time for the family to figure out what to do with her apartment and all of the things in it, and bless her, being the wonderful, thoughtful, caring person she was, most things that were important had a sticky tag with someone's name on the back of it already. She was planning ahead, and she wanted to make sure things got where they needed to go. But then there was just a lot of, Tupperware and toasters and things that we had to decide between all the aunts and uncles and cousins how to sell it or make sure it found a home. And so we were doing that all together. And as we were getting ready to leave, I must have had some breakable things, and so my aunt came with this old quilt, and it's old, it's kind of frayed. She had made it for my grandmother decades ago. It had sort of lived its usefulness, and she said, "Here, I'm not taking this with me, use it as padding. Take it and use it as padding." And so I did, and brought those things home and put it in the linen closet, because you never know when you might need another layer on a bed. And then maybe 6 months later, I went in there because we were having company, and it was winter, and we needed a blanket, and I pulled it out, and I went to unfold it, and it smelled like her house. It smelled like my grandmother, and I closed it back up again. I didn't want to lose that smell, and I put it back in there, and I tried to figure out how I could save it for when my mother came, because I wanted her to get that smell too. And of course, you can't hang on to that smell, really, and it's faded, and it's on a bed now, but I was almost in her house when I could smell it. And so I've been thinking about this house that is full of this smell, Lazarus' house, this morning. And I've been thinking a lot about what might it have been like to be Lazarus in this story. Lazarus, the one that Jesus raised from the dead just the chapter before, in a way that was weird and strange and difficult. And Jesus went there and said, "Move the stone." And his sister said, "Jesus, it's not going to smell good. Time has passed. It's not going to be pretty." And Jesus just goes on ahead, doesn't he? And so here is Lazarus, and you wonder, is he still sort of blinking? Is he still trying to figure out what on earth is going on? I don't know, but I wonder if smells have stuck with him. What it was like to walk out of that tomb. And I wonder about this perfume that Mary just wastes all over Jesus' feet. Was that what she used when Lazarus died? Was that how she prepared his body? Because that's what you did. You do your best for the people you love when there's nothing else you can do. And so I wonder about that smell, if Lazarus smells that and says, oh yeah, that was for me. Mary is over the top, isn't she? Mary is beyond extravagant with this perfume. When you think about the money, a year's worth of sort of working person's wages just poured out on Jesus. And I don't care if it's Jesus, those are still feet. Those are feet. And then Mary takes her hair, not short hair, probably beautiful long hair, and not the way that we handle hair, women's hair especially in our society, which is that it's nice, it's decorative, whatever. But hair was a slightly more private and a more sensual thing. And so it wasn't something that you unbound in public, and certainly not that you rubbed on people's feet. And Mary is beyond good taste. Mary is beyond anything that seems even slightly normal. As I was reading this week, I caught the phrase wild love. And I like that. Her wild love for Jesus, because it goes beyond anything that makes any sort of sense. Except that maybe Mary has gotten a glimpse already of who Jesus really is. I wonder if she has caught the smell of Jesus' love that is exactly that kind of extravagant, wild love. Love that goes far beyond what makes any sort of sense. Love that does things that really push people's boundaries. Lazarus here, sitting at a table, I wonder about, because dead people were not to be touched. I mean, there's a very clear understanding of what is clean and not clean and how to get yourself clean again in Jewish communities and in the tradition. And Lazarus, I don't think there is anything in the Old Testament about how to purify yourself from having been dead. There's no accounting for that there in the tradition. And so what is he doing at the table? Is he allowed to eat with them? Is it weird? Do the other dinner guests say, I'll sit over here? But Jesus does that again and again. He pushes what seems normal, what seems right, because he has God's extravagant love. And as I think about Mary's crazy gift that disturbs the people around her, that bothers, it bothers Judas especially, but I think in some ways he's the voice for everybody else, saying, no, you're not loving God the right way. Here's how we should love God. I wonder when I see her gift, if it isn't explicitly meant to point to Jesus' extravagant love. There is a picture, a model of atonement, of understanding what it is that God does for us in Jesus Christ on the cross, that Martin Luther talked about, that has just caught my heart. There are lots and lots of ways to understand the cross, because in fact we can't understand it. It's this wild love that we constantly try to make sense of. We know that it has something to do with reconciling us to God, but we don't always have the words for it, and sometimes we pile layers upon layers of words. And so this is another layer of words. Martin Luther talked about it as being kind of like a marriage. When we come to a marriage, I may come with all kinds of student loans, and you may come with a nice sports car, but once we're married, they're ours. Both the debt and the sports car, right? What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. And Luther said that's what the cross is. That's what the cross and our baptism is. It's when we get what belongs to Jesus, and Jesus gets what belongs to us. And so Jesus has the smell of Lazarus' death on him and takes on our sin and our sorrow and our suffering, so that none of those have the last word anymore, not even death. Jesus takes all of those and gives us what is his life. That smell, that perfume of being a child of God from now until forever, gives us his hope and his freedom, and gives us that pervasive smell of extravagant love, so that we walk around stinking like those exchange students with God's overwhelming love on us. Sometimes it may even make you a little lightheaded. The smell of God's grace, of extravagant love. Maybe you've smelled it. Maybe you know someone who reeks of it, or maybe it's just a faint whisper that passed by you once when the Spirit was working in your life. Maybe you have caught that smell and it's there every day, or maybe it's like the smell in that blanket and you just hope that it'll hang on. But the gift is that grace comes to us, that grace comes to us in our baptism, that grace comes to us every day of our lives, because Jesus wants to give us what is his and to take what is ours. And so that's our question this morning. Does grace have a smell to it? Have you caught that scent? Is it lingering or clinging anywhere in your life? And if you're not sure, go looking, because God is never, ever going to give up on us. It stops at nothing to come and find us. And smells are really hard to get rid of. Thanks be to God.